Hello everyone, welcome back to the International Security course. Today we will continue with the final chapter, chapter 8, which is about non-military security. In our last chapter, we will first talk about the concept of human security, then we will focus on environmental security, economic security, and lastly we will focus on food security. Let's start with the concept of human security. The concept of human security was first used in 1994 Human Development Report of the United Nations Development Programme as safety from chronic threats such as hunger, disease, and oppression, and protection from sudden and harmful disruptions in the patterns of daily life, whether in homes, in jobs, or in communities. The natural rights conception of human security involves the protection of basic human values such as individuals' right to life and liberty, as well as the security of the human person as articulated in Article 2 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This conception also underlines the international community's role to protect and promote these basic human values. The United Nations has involved in international conflicts within the framework of humanitarian intervention and judicial intervention through the establishment of ad hoc international criminal tribunals by the Security Council resolutions. This involvement of the United Nations is considered as critical for the protection of populations from state-sponsored violence as well as civil and ethnic conflicts. Let's move on to environmental security. The 21st century presents a new approach to security threats. Today, scholars and politicians alike have been debating non-traditional security threats, which are also known as non-military threats, to better understand world politics and to take the necessary measures to sustain and promote international order. The concept of environmental security seeks to explain the dangers arising from the ecosystem change, ecosystem loss, and global warming. Although the main reasons of such security threats is not environmentally related in many cases, the environmental degradation shares a substantial role in the rise of a conflict in world politics. A number of analyses suggested that not only environmental issues should be considered as a security problem, but also they might trigger a violent conflict. An international environmental regime was developed over the last 30 years. Interest in the environment has grown steadily since the first Earth Day organized by environmental activists in 1970. The first UN conference on the environment, which was accepted as the beginning of the international environmental policy, took place in Stockholm, Sweden in 1972. In 1997, nations adopted the Kyoto Protocol, which required the signatory developed countries to reduce their production of greenhouse gases by the year 2012 by 5.2%. 10 years after the Earth Summit, during the 2002 World Summit on Sustainable Development convened in Johannesburg, South Africa, the commitment to sustainable development was reaffirmed and the importance of globalization was emphasized. Let's look into economic security. Economic and ecological developments in an increasingly interdependent world present potential threats for actors at all levels of analysis. The causes, effects, and solutions of these economic and environmental challenges ignore national boundaries, calling into question many assumptions of definitions of security. Economic security refers to the entitlement of any individual to have a minimum regular income that comes from a lucrative activity or, as a last resort, from a social security trust fund. Taking such a view can only mean that only a quarter of the whole world's population benefits from economic security. Even if the problems related to economic insecurity are greater in the developing countries, the developed countries also show concern for these problems. While globalization has created new opportunities, it has also generated political and economic instabilities and conflicts within states. Whereas over 800,000 people a year lose their lives to violence, about 2.8 billion suffer from poverty, ill health, illiteracy, and other maladies. Human security recognizes the linkage between conflict and deprivation. The latter provides a causal context to many conflicts. Conversely, conflict increases poverty and crime and devastates economies. Nowadays, mainstream academics and diplomats and politicians speak openly of the need to integrate approaches to poverty and security. Leaders of the G8, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, for example, have spoken about a possible link between poverty and conflict. Before we end, we should also talk about food security. In 2017, an estimated of nearly 821 million people faced persistent hunger and chronic food deprivation. Meanwhile, due to conflict-induced emergencies as well as rising natural disasters, demand for food assistance has continued to grow. Food security emerged as a critical issue in the mid-1970s in the discussions of international food problems. According to the 1974 World Food Summit, food security refers to the availability at all times of adequate world food supplies of basic foodstuffs to sustain a steady expansion of food consumption and to offset fluctuations in production and prices. During the 1990s, the food security literature has broadened to address market-oriented economic growth, agricultural development, poverty reduction, demographic trends, rising incomes, changing food consumption patterns, gender issues, and the environment. The most commonly used definition of food security is the one developed at the World Food Summit of 1996. The principal achievement of this summit was a pledge by the 186 participating governments to reduce the number of undernourished people worldwide by about 1/2 to 400 million by the year 2015. There are four main components of food security, and these are availability, accessibility, utilization, and stability. The first dimension is the availability. Availability refers to whether food is physically available. The second dimension is food security, is accessibility, which is the key issue in discussing food security. Utilization refers to food quality and nutritional content. This relates to health, HIV, AIDS, access to water and clean energy sources. Stability is most related to the consequences of sudden shocks. Food security is a situation that does not have to occur a moment, a day, or a season only, but on a permanent basis with sustainability. So, dear friends, this is the end of our program for Chapter 8 of the International Security course. Don't forget that you can always go back and watch our previous programs. Goodbye.